crank it up. I'm Jim Price, but before I get to today's video, I want to give a special shout out to some people because I saw something I thought was really cool. I'm told that there was a collaboration on Discord to solve the secret puzzle at the end of last week's video that most of you missed. I'm told that Ludicrousness, Beryl, Hansel, potentially others collaborated to crack it, and I think that's really cool. There's a lot of knowledge and creativity in this community and a lot of power in working together, so I'm happy to see that. If only there was a board game company who would embrace the ideas of others and incorporate them into the product, wouldn't that be cool? I guess I could only hope. But today, I want to talk about power creep, and by that, I mean the actual term, not my definition of it. I played Magic for a few years in the 90s, but never that seriously, so I was unaware that power creep was an established term for newer cards deprecating older cards in collectible card games. I just thought it was a fitting term for the progressive adding of power that could come back to bite you. But while I often talk about smash-up power creep, I rarely talk about CCG power creep as a whole, but I will today. So for this video only, when I say power creep, I refer to the overarching public definition. Is power creep a problem in smash-up? It often feels like it is. But there's a difference in that smash-up is pre-constructed, and there is a perception that individual cards don't matter. The faction balance matters. The premise of this video is predicated on the idea that that statement is incorrect, that individual cards do matter. In my experience, one of two things happens. Either the faction isn't as balanced as it seems, or the faction is internally imbalanced to the point where it becomes really swingy. But it's hard to measure power creep beyond comparing two individual cards because you need to see trends. Power tends to go up or down or change forms, but there is something a lot easier to understand. And after Disney, I believe I have a way to measure power creep, which I call TDAC. And if you couldn't figure it out from the thumbnail, TDAC stands for Talent Draw a Card. TDAC is interesting because for much of Smash Up's history, it was expressly avoided. It was a baseline that cards did not cross. Why is it so strong? Because it gets you extra cards when you need them most, during your play cards phase. Consider cards over the years. Water Lily gets you a card at the start of your turn, so it may never trigger, and it has a hard limit of 1 per turn. Difference Engine and Missing Uplink are 2 resource cards that give you a card at the end of the turn, so it can't be used right away. And I'll say that drawing cards in turn is almost always infinitely better. The Librarian discards madness to draw a card, which is something so penalizing I rarely use it. Moon Touched must be played on the highest powered minion on a base, and again it's a 2 resource card. Rainbow requires a minion play there that turn, so the more you use it, the less you'll use it in the future. I think the closest we ever came to true TDAC is the Classic Rocker, but Classic Rocker has a once per turn limitation too. Tea Party, Hidden Base, Sharing Powder, Jarvis, they are all different ways of getting a card a turn. You see some interesting approximations though. Master Thief draws a card per turn, but it's a treasure card, which is crucial to the thieves, but I prefer TDAC in all honesty because thieves desperately need card draw. Space Knight is close to TDAC for actions, not guaranteed to trigger, but there are other fringe benefits. In all honesty, I'd still take TDAC personally, which I find to be super strong, which is part of the reason why it did not exist. Until it did. The first instance of TDAC was the Arcane Protector. Titans are difficult for me to place from a rank perspective. I think that Titans generally rank higher than leaders, so it makes sense that, even if leaders avoided TDAC, that Titans were slotted above them. Titans would get TDAC, even though there seems to be a mandatory belief that Titans must have 2 abilities. So TDAC plus something else is really strong. And to highlight this, we have to look at the history of DAC, draw a card. In the beginning, drawing a card was considered so strong that it had to be given to a power cap soldier in Enchantress. You see recruits who can draw a card if a condition is being met, and not always right away. Sometimes you get a specific single card in higher ranked units. In a game where drawing your best cards matters, card draw creates consistency, and it's powerful and not meant to be given liberally. But then, something else happened. We started to see more and more TDAC, to the point where it appears in 3 of the last 4 expansions. And in every case, it's not just TDAC by itself. There are other abilities on top of it. This got me really thinking after I saw Bell. TDAC was being avoided because it was so strong. So why is it appearing now as part of a set of abilities? That, to me, was a sign of power creep potentially. Let's look at the candidates individually. When I did the Yokozuna leader video, I talked about how Yokozuna had potentially 4 abilities: extra power, the ongoing ability, TDAC, and the ability to push someone away. Ignoring faction context, this seems like a crazy leader. An ability that was expressly avoided is now just an ingredient in a leader ability. A lot of players thought Yokozuna was overpowered in that video, and it's not that I think sumos are overpowered in general, but I'll say this: they make vampires work, so that it has to count for something. The next entry was Mysterio. Now you can try to argue that Mysterio is only a 4 to compensate for TDAC, but I'll just say that's not true. In addition to that statement being incorrect, sometimes having lower power is better for synergy partners, and having less power allows the ability to stay in play longer. Mysterio gets TDAC or a useful extra play, and then we get Bell. Bell gets TDAC or the ability to draw or discard a card, which is a gimmick to me because why would you do that? It's basically an excuse to play a card that can be played on discard. Even though an ability like Cogsworth would be stronger, at least it makes sense. Truthfully, the extra play for Beauty and the Beast cards can be really impactful, so gimmick or not, it's strong. But she also gets the on-play ability to potentially draw 3 cards, and that's just overkill to me. It's why I paired them with Time Travelers to see how exploitable it is, and clearly it is. While TDAC is pretty obvious that it's appeared more frequently, there are other signs. I know players think that Kree power creeps wizards, and while I believe that the Titan makes that not completely be true, you have to ask, why did wizards get a Titan, and why does Minerva draw 2 cards? But why does this matter? Because I believe in the balance equation. If you look at 2 factions and call them balanced, if one faction clearly has stronger cards, they must compensate by having other cards that are clearly weaker. This isn't good because it makes factions inconsistent and swingy and can mask real issues with balance. Having cards that are too good requires other cards to be bad, and as players, we don't like bad cards even if a faction is supposedly balanced. But if the cards aren't objectively weaker, then you don't really have balance at all, and the scale starts tipping to the right. I know balance is a difficult concept, often in the eye of the beholder, but here's one thing that isn't so subjective. How long are games taking? Admittedly, I don't have access to all my old data, but it feels like games are getting faster because you are drawing more cards and having access to your strongest cards, expediting the game and making individual turns more impactful. And I don't think this is a good thing because the game can feel over too soon. When there are less turns, card draw becomes even more important, so giving it out liberally means who gets their card draw going may win simply because of it. Though I don't subscribe to this belief myself, I have seen comments that people would pick a Marvel faction over any other faction just because they believe Marvel to be stronger, and regardless of whether or not that's true, it's the perception that people believe it to be true that is something that we should be paying attention to. And that brings up the question, where is the mistake? To me, it's pretty clear that TDAC was avoided for most of its history, and now it isn't. Was it overvalued before, or undervalued now? That's not an easy question to answer, but I myself think it is undervalued now. If you gave me a leader whose only ability was TDAC, I'd be super excited about it. Maybe TDAC is the type of ability that is so universally useful that it can't be given to someone alone and provide thematic meaning. For example, each of the TDAC minions I mentioned before has TDAC or its faction's primary mechanic, but that to me is theme getting in the way of balance. One thing we cannot discount, since 2 of the mentioned TDACs occur in Marvel and Disney, is that the absence of the slotting system in those expansions might play a role. This is definitely true to me because another Disney character has TDAC, but they haven't been revealed yet to my knowledge. And when you look overall at the other factions, I see a few cards that very closely approximate TDAC or combine to form TDAC, and when you see the full Disney expansion, I think it tells a clear picture that the idea of drawing cards is here to stay and will probably expedite the game overall in terms of turns. So if you were to ask me, does Smash Up have a power creep problem? I would say yes, based on the evolving and ever-present nature of TDAC. What seems like a theoretical ability to never meet is now more common than ever, making newer factions faster and more consistent. Assuming that there is a change in philosophy, where do you stand on the divide? Was TDAC overvalued before or undervalued now? Or am I reading too much into all of this? Do you think Smash Up has a power creep problem? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.